On Monday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the cables vindicate the Israeli position that Iran poses a nuclear threat. Netanyahu said, quote, "Our region has been hostage to a narrative that is the result of 60 years of propaganda, which paints Israel as the greatest threat. In reality, leaders understand that that view is bankrupt. For the first time in history, there's agreement that Iran is the threat. If leaders start saying openly what they have long been saying behind closed doors, we can make a real breakthrough on the road to peace," Netanyahu said. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton also discussed Iran at her news conference in Washington. This is what she said.
I think that it should not be a surprise to anyone that Iran is a source of great concern, not only in the United States. That what comes through in every meeting that I have anywhere in the world is a concern about Iranian actions and intentions.
Hillary Clinton and Benjamin Netanyahu surely know of the careful polls of Arab public opinion. The Brookings Institute just a few months ago released extensive polls of what Arabs think about Iran. And the results are rather striking. They show that Arab opinion holds that the major threat in the region is Israel. That's 80%. The second major threat is the United States. That's 77%. Iran is listed as a threat by 10%. With regard to nuclear weapons, rather remarkably, a majority, in fact 57%, say that the region would have a positive effect in the region if Iran had nuclear weapons. Now, these are not small numbers. 80%, 77% say that the U.S. and Israel are the major threat. 10% say that Iran is the major threat. Now, this may not be reported in the newspapers here. It is in England, but it's certainly familiar to the Israeli and the U.S. governments and to the ambassadors. But there isn't a word about it anywhere. What that reveals is the profound hatred for democracy on the part of our political leadership and, of course, the Israeli political leadership. These things aren't even to be mentioned. And this seeps its way all through the diplomatic service. So the cables don't have any indication of that. When they talk about Arabs, they mean the Arab dictators, not the population, which is overwhelmingly opposed to the conclusions that the analysts here, Clinton and the media, have drawn. There's also a minor problem. That's the major problem. A minor problem is that we don't know from the cables what the Arab leaders think and say. We know what was selected from the range of what they say. So there's a filtering process. We don't know how much it distorts the information, but there's no question that what is a radical distortion is, or not even a distortion, a reflection of the concern that the dictators are what matter. The population doesn't matter, even if it's overwhelmingly opposed to U.S. policy. This shows up there are similar things elsewhere. So just keeping to this region, one of the most interesting cables was a cable from the U.S. ambassador in Israel to Hillary Clinton, which described the as attack on Gaza, which we should call a U.S.-Israeli attack on Gaza, December 2008. It states that, correctly, that there had been a truce. It does not add that during the truce, which was really not observed by Israel, but during the truce, Hamas scrupulously observed it. According to the Israeli government, not a single rocket was fired. That's an omission, but then comes a straight lie. It says that in December 2008, Hamas renewed rocket firing, and therefore Israel had to attack in self-defense. Now, the ambassador surely is aware that there must be somebody in the American embassy who reads the Israeli press, the mainstream Israeli press, in which case the embassy is surely aware that It's exactly the opposite. Hamas was calling for a renewal of the ceasefire. Israel considered the offer and rejected it, preferring to bomb rather than to have security. Also omitted is that while Israel never observed the ceasefire, it maintained the siege in violation of the truce agreement. On November 4th, the day of the U.S. election, 2008, the Israeli army entered Gaza, invaded Gaza, and killed half a dozen Hamas militants, which did lead to an exchange of fire in which all the casualties, as usual, Palestinian. Then in December, Hamas, when the truce officially ended, Hamas called for renewing it. Israel refused, and the U.S. and Israel chose to launch the war. What the embassy reported is a gross falsification, and a very significant one, since it has to do with the justification for this murderous attack, which means either the embassy hasn't a clue what's going on, or else they're lying outright. The siege is a criminal act in the first place. The Security Council has called on it for Israel to lift it. Others have. It's designed to, as Israeli officials have stated, to keep the people of Gaza to a minimal level of existence. They don't want to kill them all off, because that wouldn't look good in international opinion, but as they put it, to keep them on a diet. The justification, this began very shortly after the official Israeli withdrawal. There was an election in January 2006, actually the only free election in the Arab world, carefully monitored, recognized to be free, but it had a flaw. The wrong people won, and the U.S., namely Hamas, which the U.S. didn't want and Israel didn't want. Instantly, within days, the U.S. and Israel instituted harsh measures to punish the people of Gaza for voting the wrong way in a free election. The next step was that the U.S. and Israel sought to, along with the Palestinian Authority, tried to carry out a military coup in Gaza to overthrow the elected government. This failed. Hamas beat back the coup attempt. That was July 2007. At that point, the siege got much harsher. In between, there were many acts of violence and shellings, invasions, and so on and so forth. But the basic, Israel claims that when the truce was established in summer 2008, Israel's reason for not observing it, withdrawing the siege, was that there's an Israeli soldier, Gilad Shalit, who was captured at the border, and this is, international commentary regards this as a terrible crime. Well, whatever you think about it, capturing a soldier of an attacking army, and the army was attacking Gaza, capturing a soldier of an attacking army isn't anywhere near the level of crime of kidnapping civilians. Just one day before the capture of Gilad Shalit at the border, Israeli troops had entered Gaza, kidnapped 2 civilians, the Muammar brothers, spirited them across the border. They've disappeared somewhere in Israel's prison system, which is, there are hundreds, maybe 1,000 or so people, sometimes there for years without charges. There are also secret prisons. We don't know what happens there. This alone is a far worse crime than the kidnapping of Shalit, and in fact, you could argue that there was a reason why it was barely covered. Israel's been doing this for years, in fact, decades, kidnapping, capturing people, hijacking ships, killing people, bringing them to Israel, sometimes as hostages for many years. So it's regular practice. But Israel can do what it likes, but the reaction here and in the rest of the world of regarding the Shalit kidnapping, not kidnapping, you don't kidnap soldiers, the capture of a soldier as an unspeakable crime, a justification for maintaining a murderous siege, that's disgraceful. Contrary to the image that's portrayed here, The United States is not an honest broker. It's a participant in a direct, crucial participant in Israeli crimes, both in the West Bank and in Gaza. The attack in Gaza was a clear case in point, used American weapons. The U.S. Blocked ceasefire efforts, gave diplomatic support. The same is true of the daily ongoing crimes in the West Bank. We shouldn't forget that. Actually, in Area C, the area of the West Bank that Israel controls, conditions for Palestinians have been reported by Save the Children to be worse than in Gaza. And again, this all takes place because of, on the basis of crucial, decisive U.S. military, diplomatic, economic support, and also ideological support, meaning distorting the situation, as is done again dramatically in the cables. The siege itself is simply criminal. It's not only blocking desperately needed aid from coming in, it also drives Palestinians away from the border. Gaza is a small place, densely overcrowded, and Israeli fire and attacks drive Palestinians away from the arable land on the border, and also drive fishermen in from Gazan territorial waters. They're compelled by Israeli gunboats, all illegal of course, to fish right near the shore, where fishing is almost impossible because Israel has destroyed the power systems and sewage systems, and the contamination is terrible. This is just a stranglehold to punish people for being there and for insisting on voting the wrong way. And for what the United States should do is very simple. It should join the world. I mean, there are negotiations going on, supposedly. They're presented here as a standard picture as the U.S. is an honest broker trying to bring together two recalcitrant opponents, Israel, Palestinian Authority. That's just a charade. I mean, if there were serious negotiations, they would be organized by some neutral party, and the U.S. and Israel would be on one side, and the world would be on the other side. And that is not an exaggeration. It shouldn't be a secret that there has long been an overwhelming international consensus on a diplomatic political solution. Everyone knows the basic outlines, some details you can argue about. It includes everyone except the United States and Israel. The U.S. has been blocking it for 35 years with occasional departures, brief ones. It includes the Arab League. It includes the Organization of Islamic States, which happens to include Iran. It includes every relevant actor except the United States and Israel, the two rejectionist states. So if there were to be negotiations that were serious, that's the way they would be organized. The actual negotiations are barely reach the level of comedy. The issue that's being debated is a footnote, minor footnote, expansion of settlements. Of course it's illegal. In fact, everything that Israel's doing in the West Bank and Gaza is illegal. That's been, it hasn't even been controversial since 1967. No.